Hi, my name is Anirudh and I teach chemistry to class 11th and 12th. Our topic for today's discussion is electrochemistry. Before we start, let me give you some reasons why it is important for us to learn this chapter. The number one would be electrochemistry teaches us to prevent rusting of surface of metal by something called as galvanization. The second application would be electrochemistry teaches us how to determine the strength of various oxidizing agent and various reducing agents. The third application would be in something called as fuel cells. These are devices which are used in space missions for conversion of electricity with the help of oxygen gas and hydrogen gas. The last application would be electrochemistry is useful in all our daily appliances in the form of cells and batteries. Talking about cells, let me give you some idea what are the different categories of cells. So basically we have two major types of cells. The first one is called as an electrolytic cell and the next one is called as a galvanic cell. Okay. So what is the work of an electrolytic cell? It is that it helps us to convert electrical energy into chemical energy. Okay. The second point would be a redox reaction takes place inside the cell. That means reduction at one terminal and oxidation at the other terminal. वैसे ही the third point about an electrolytic cell would be the cell is non-spontaneous in nature. That means the change in Gibbs free energy value will come out as positive. What do you mean by non-spontaneous? It means that the reaction inside the cell won't take automatically. We would need to provide an external factor for us to force the reaction to take place. Okay, let's move on to talk about the galvanic cell. Galvanic cell is the exact opposite of your electrolytic cell. It means that a chemical energy would get converted into electrical energy. Conversion of chemical energy into electrical energy takes place. Also, a redox reaction happens at the galvanic cell. It means anode would take place at one terminal, oxidation would take place at one terminal and reduction would take place at other terminal. Okay. Third point here would be the delta G value would be negative. It means that galvanic cell is spontaneous in nature. It means the reaction inside the cell is going to take place automatically. We won't need to provide an external source for it, external condition for it. Okay. Today's discussion is only about a small topic of electrolytic cell, and I'm going to show you how the working takes place and what is deposited at the cathode and what is liberated at the anode. Let's have a look at the diagram and working of an electrolytic cell. So basically what do we have here is we have a beaker and inside the beaker you have two electrodes fitted next to each other and an external electrical circuit in form of a battery or a cell is used. Okay, so this is your typical representation of an electrolytic cell. Inside the cell, as soon as you can see the two rods, two electrodes, these are made up of either platinum because it is inert in nature, or it can be made up of graphite. Why? Because graphite is a good conductor of electricity. Okay. Inside the cell, we are going to place molten NaCl or fused NaCl in this manner. Now what do we know? We know that NaCl is a good electrolyte and a good electrolyte will dissociate itself into its constituent cation and anion. So here we get Na plus and here we get Cl minus. Now let's look at the working of this rod, the working of this cell. What happens exactly? As soon as I switch on the external electrical circuit, the flow of electron, that means electricity, will start to flow and this terminal will acquire, this rod will acquire a negative charge. Okay. As soon as this rod is acquiring a negative charge, the Na plus will get attracted towards the rod and will start to travel towards the direction of this rod. As soon as the Na plus reaches the rod, a reaction would take place, that is Na plus will gain an electron and will convert itself into sodium metal. The color of this metal which is getting deposited is silverish white. The deposition which we will see would be at the surface of this rod in such manner. Okay, so what are we going to write? The sodium metal is getting deposited. Now, as soon as we can see this reaction, Na plus is gaining an electron and getting converted into sodium metal. This is a reduction reaction, and always we will remember that reduction will take place at the surface of cathode. If I were to give you a very small tip to remember this, guys, so we are going to look at two animals, that is red cat and an ox. Okay, so the red here means reduction, and reduction always means what? Gain of electron, whereas this cat means cathode, and cathode is the one that is going to attract your cation. So the cathode is the one that is going to attract the cation. अगर थोड़ा लॉजिकली बात करेंगे तो कैथोड अगर कटायन को अट्रैक्ट करता है, वी नो दैट कटायन इज पॉजिटिवली चार्ज, तो अगर वो बंदे ने कटायन को अट्रैक्ट किया तो उसको खुद पे कौन सा चार्ज रखना पड़ेगा? नेगेटिवली चार्ज. एंड दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई दिस रॉड इज कॉल्ड एज व्हाट? कैथोड. व्हाई? बिकॉज इट इज नेगेटिवली चार्ज इन केस ऑफ अ इलेक्ट्रोलाइटिक सेल. And we all know if one rod is cathode, the next one has got to be the anode, correct? Okay, so this "and" here means anode. Anode is the one that is responsible for attracting the anion, and ox means oxidation. Oxidation means loss of electron. So this is the reaction at cathode. Let's see what is the reaction at anode. So at the surface of anode, what do we get to know? The anode is attached to the positive side, and hence it will attract the Cl minus ion. Right? Because both of them are oppositely charged. So the Cl minus will start to travel towards the direction of the anode, and some reaction is going to take place. Let's see what is the reaction. The Cl minus ion will lose its electron and will get converted into half a mole of chlorine gas, and an electron is liberated. Electron is emitted out. Loss of electron takes place. The color of this chlorine gas is greenish yellow in color. Greenish yellow, and because it is a gas, the gas is always liberated. That means it will flow out. Okay, so this is the reaction at anode. The Cl minus ion will get converted into half a mole of chlorine gas, and an electron is emitted out. Okay, so what does this mean? This is an oxidation reaction. Loss of electron has taken place, and loss of electron is nothing but oxidation. Oxidation takes place at the surface of anode. So this is the reaction. Now, what would be the overall cell reaction if I am going to explain you this? So we are going to call it as NCR. It means net cell reaction or overall cell reaction. Okay, what are we going to do? We are going to find out net cell reaction by adding reaction of cathode with reaction of anode. We need to add the reaction of cathode and anode in such a way that the electrons are getting cancelled out, and that means they should have opposite direction and should be equal in the magnitude. So what we can see here is the electron is here on the left side, here it is on the right side. Both of them have one magnitude. That means it can get cancelled out, and last, the final reaction that we are going to get is Na plus Cl minus will get converted into Na plus half a mole of chlorine gas. So this is our NCR, or we can call this as the overall cell reaction taking place inside the electrolytic cell when we are using molten NaCl. Okay? If someone will ask you what is happening at the surface of cathode, answer is deposition of sodium metal, and what is happening at the surface of anode, it will be liberation of chlorine gas. Sodium is silverish white in color, whereas the chlorine gas would be greenish yellow in color. Okay, So this was your point about electrolytic cell. Now, what is exactly the working? Let's have a look at this. What happens is the electron, this electron is coming from the battery or the external electrical circuit. This electron which is coming at the surface of the cathode is accepted by Na plus and getting converted into sodium. Now, in order to complete the circuit, हमको इलेक्ट्रॉन का फ्लो कंप्लीट करवाना पड़ेगा, तब जाके सर्किट कंप्लीट होता है. एंड फॉर दैट Cl माइनस will lose its electron and get converted into chlorine gas. ये जो इलेक्ट्रॉन यहाँ से रिलीज हुआ है, this is responsible for completion of the circuit. How? Have a look here. As soon as this electron is released, कहाँ पे रिलीज हुआ होगा? That electron must have been released at the surface of anode. जैसे ही इलेक्ट्रॉन यहां से निकला, the electron will face a very huge attraction from the surface of anode. Why? Because it is attached to the positive terminal and the magnitude of the charge of positive is very high. That is why this electron will face a huge attraction and will start to travel upwards. जैसे ही वो ऊपर पहुंचेगा, it will reach the end of the rod and will further migrate where on the wire, and because of a potential difference here, because plus and minus is there, the charge is there, there is potential difference, and because of that potential difference the electron will go ahead and it will reach the other terminal. That will help you to complete the circuit. So this is how the working of an electrolytic cell takes place. Now, if someone will ask you how much is the mass of the substance deposited, so what we can see here is at the surface of the cathode there is small depositions of the sodium metal. What would be the mass, overall mass of that substance? ठीक है, अगर हमको ये चीज पता करनी है guys, तो we have something called as Faraday's law of electrolysis. That law will help us to find out how much is the mass of the substance which is deposited at the surface of any electrode. Okay, let's look at Faraday's law of electrolysis. Faraday has given us two laws of electrolysis. We are just going to look at about the first law as of now. Let's look at the first law, or we can call it as F1, Faraday's first law of electrolysis. Let me tell you what is the law twice and then usko board pe likhenge. Faraday's first law of electrolysis says that the amount or the weight of substance deposited during the electrolysis is directly proportional to the applied electricity. ठीक है, क्या बोल रहा है फिर से सुनना कि Faraday law बोलता है the amount or the weight of substance deposited at the electrode is directly proportional to the applied electricity. Okay, let's write the law. The mass of weight of substance deposited at the electrode is directly proportional to the applied electricity. So this is the Faraday's first law of electrolysis. Now let's frame an equation regarding this. Let's call the mass of the substance as W and let's call the electricity, the charge, as Q. What do we get to know from the law? The mass of the substance is directly proportional to the applied electricity. So this W is the weight of substance, whereas this Q is the charge. Okay, the weight of the substance is in grams, the charge is in coulombs. Now, in order to remove the proportionality sign, we need to add a constant. Okay, so next step, what are we going to do? We know that charge can be written as what, guys? Charge can be written as a product of current into time. So this I will represent your current having SI unit in amperes, whereas this small t will represent time having SI unit in seconds. Okay, so this would be our next type of relation. Now, in order to remove the proportionality sign, we need to add a constant. So the constant here is Z into I into T. This will be our final type of equation. What? W will be equal to Z into I into T. What is this Z? Z means the electrochemical इक्विवेलेंट। Z is a constant जिसका नाम क्या होता है, इलेक्ट्रोकेमिकल इक्विवेलेंट। Now if you will ask me, sir, how do you find out the value of this constant? So let's write it in the next step. अगर किसी ने Z का वैल्यू पूछा तो Z is equal to what? E divided by F. Now you will ask me, sir, what is E? तो चलो, E means equivalent mass. E means equivalent mass. Now you will wonder, sir, what is equivalent mass? तो equivalent mass निकालने का तरीका होता है मोलर मास डिवाइडेड बाय n factor. Now you all must be wondering, what is n factor? N factor is the number of change in electron which takes place during a redox reaction, or we can call this which is the taking change in the oxidation reaction or in a reduction reaction. N factor is the change in the number of electron during oxidation or reduction. Okay, what is this F? F means Faraday's constant. Faraday's constant, and the approximate value of Faraday's constant is 96500 coulombs. So this is your method for finding out Z. Z means the electrochemical equivalent. Formula is E divided by F. So now let's put this Z ka value in this above equation and let's get a final reaction. Let's get a final equation for finding the weight of the substance. So the final formula would be W is equal to, let's put this Z ka value as E upon F. The formula hoga E into I into T divided by F. This is how you are supposed to find out the mass of the substance deposited in gram, where during the process of electrolysis at the surface of cathode. ऐसे ढूंढना है। If you will ask me, sir, n factor कैसे निकालना होता है? तो n factor के लिए let's take some example. How do you calculate n factor? Let's have a random reaction taking place. Let's take Mn plus 2 and it is getting converted into Mn. So what do you know? Here the oxidation number is plus 2, here the oxidation number is 0. तो plus 2 से 0 गया, plus 2 से 0 गया, कितने का चेंज हुआ? 2 का चेंज, और जो चेंज होता है वही n factor होता है. The change in the number of electron will give you value of n factor. वैसे ही if you will ask me, sir, one more example, let's take one more example. Imagine if you have aluminium plus 3 से वो कहाँ जा रहा है? It is getting converted into aluminium का atom. It will gain 3 electron. यहाँ पे ऑक्सीडेशन नंबर है +3, यहाँ पे ऑक्सीडेशन नंबर 0, +3 से 0 गया, बोलो कितने का चेंज? 3 का चेंज. तो n factor would be 3 So this is how you will find out n factor का value. मोलर मास और एटॉमिक मास कितना तो हमको आना चाहिए. Okay, so this is our formula. इसी के basis पे we are going to solve 2-3 MCQs in the later part. Now let's find out the value of Faraday's constant. Someone must be wondering, sir, ये 96500 coulomb आया कहाँ से? So let me just tell you what a definition of Faraday's constant would be. Okay, let's look here. 1 Faraday means what? The Faraday's constant, ये value कहाँ से आई? It means that the charge on 1 mole of electrons will give you the value of Faraday's constant. क्या? 1 मोल इलेक्ट्रॉन पे कितना चार्ज है वही क्या होता है? Faraday constant का वैल्यू होता है. That means 1 Faraday is equal to, what do we know? The charge of electron is 1.6 into 10 raised to -19 multiplied by, what is the value of Avogadro's number? It is 6.022 into 10 raised to 23. When you multiply this, the approximate value that is coming out for the Faraday's constant would be 96500 coulomb. Okay, so this is how your value of 96500, the Faraday's constant, comes out. Okay, next thing I would like to highlight here is, if someone will ask you कि 1 Faraday में इतना है तो n Faraday में कितना चार्ज होगा? Okay, so the next formula that is upcoming is, if in a electrolysis process someone will ask you how much is the Faraday required, what is the number of Faraday required? So the next formula for number of Faraday of charge, what is the formula? The formula is number of moles of substance multiplied by its multiplied by its n factor. If someone will ask you how much is the number of Faraday charge, कितना लगता है, तो बोलना है number of moles of the substance multiplied by its n factor. Let me give you one example for this. Imagine करो if we have 40 grams of calcium, okay, 40 grams of calcium in the +2 oxidation state. Okay, so if we were to calculate how much is the number of Faraday of charge required for this, how will we find out? First step, finding out the moles. Moles का formula सबको पता है क्या? Given mass upon molar mass. So what we will do? Mass upon molar mass. So what is the mass of the question? Question says mass of the calcium is 40 grams divided by, what do we know? Calcium का atomic mass भी कितना होता है? 40 होता है. 40 upon 40, the value will come out as 1. So how much is the mole? There is only 1 mole. Now if we will go and calculate the number of charge of Faraday, the number of Faraday would be moles into n factor. What would the n factor here be? N factor would be calcium +2 would gain 2 electron and get converted into calcium. How much is the change in the number of electron? +2 से 0 गया, +2 से 0 कितने का change? 2 का change. तो n factor would be 2. So finding out the value of Faraday, that is how much is the mole? There is only 1 mole. And how much is the Faraday? That is 2 Faraday. So 1 into 2, the value will be 2 Faraday. So 40 grams of calcium +2 would require 2 Faraday of charge. So this is how we will calculate the thing. Okay. One more example if you want. Let's have a look at the next example. Let's take 2.7 grams of aluminium +3. Okay. How will we find out the number of Faraday? So सबसे पहले we will find out moles. Moles का formula same होगा क्या? Mass upon molar mass. Okay, formula कैसे लिखा है? Mass upon molar mass. What is the given mass? 2.7 divided by, I hope याद है आपको, atomic mass of aluminium is 27. आपस में divide हो गया, value comes out as 0.1 mole. Mole है हमारे पास? Yes, of course we have. Now let's calculate what is the n factor. यहाँ पे aluminium +3 ने 3 इलेक्ट्रॉन लिया होगा and खुद को कन्वर्ट किया होगा aluminium atom में. So +3 से कहाँ गया 0? +3 से 0 कितने का चेंज? 3 का चेंज. तो n factor is coming out as 3. So now if someone will ask you what is the number of Faraday of charge? Number of Faraday is what? Is what? Moles multiplied by n factor. Moles multiplied by n factor. What is the number of mole? Mole is 0.1. What is the number of n factor? It is 3. So value would be 0.3 Faraday. So this is how you will calculate. Okay. Let's look at some numericals on the basis of this formula in the upcoming part. Okay. Now we've already studied the topic. Let's solve some previous year questions of NEET exam. Before we start, I would like to highlight one more point. Let's mark it as a red flag. ठीक है? अगर कभी किसी ने पूछा 1 Faraday कितना मास सब्सटेंस का डिपॉजिट करके देगा तो क्या करना है? ठीक है? If the question asks कि what will be the amount of substance deposited when only 1 Faraday of the charge is used, तो उसका आंसर होता है जितना सब्सटेंस का इक्विवेलेंट मास होगा उतना ही सब्सटेंस डिपॉजिट होगा. ठीक है? क्या बोलने का? If 1 Faraday of electricity is used or electricity is passed, the amount of substance which will be deposited will be equal to its equivalent mass. Very important. इसके लिए हम इसको रेड पेन से लिखेंगे. If 1 Faraday of electricity is passed, then the amount of substance deposited will be equal to its equivalent mass. Equal to what? Will be equal to its equivalent mass. Very, very important. Let's look at this example. Let's have an example for magnesium. Mg in +2 oxidation number will gain 2 electrons and get converted itself into Mg. अगर ये situation में only 1 Faraday of current is passed, 1 Faraday of charge is passed, what would be the amount of substance deposited? X grams. I don't know. We have to find out the value of X. So the line here is 1 Faraday of electricity will give you what the substance deposited in equal of its equivalent mass. मतलब जितना equivalent mass magnesium का होगा 1 Faraday से हमको उतना ही mg deposition मिलेगा. What do you know? Let's go and calculate the equivalent mass of mg. Equivalent mass of magnesium would be molar mass of magnesium upon n factor. What is the molar mass of Mg? I hope आपको याद है कितना होता है 24. Let's find out the n factor. n factor क्या होगा? Magnesium यहाँ पे क्या है? +2 से कहाँ गया? 0. +2 से 0 कितने का चेंज बोलो? 2 का चेंज करें तो यहाँ पे 24 divided by 2 the value would be 12. And यहाँ पे answer will be in grams. That means 1 Faraday of electricity would give you how much grams of magnesium deposited? Answer will be 12 grams of Mg will be deposited. 12 grams of magnesium will be deposited. एक और example अगर यहाँ पे discussion करने को देंगे, let's look at one more example for Na. Let's take sodium for example. Okay, Na plus will gain an electron and get converted into Na ion. Okay, I want you guys to try this on your own. Let's look at the third example for Fe. Let's take Fe, iron. Fe plus 2 will take 2 electrons and it will convert itself into Fe का atom. Iron का +2 का time ferrous ion will gain 2 electron and get converted into iron का atom. अगर यहाँ पे 1 Faraday का charge pass किया तो how much is the substance getting deposited? I want to find out that. X grams. How do you calculate? We find out the formula. Equivalent mass of Fe would be molar mass of Fe. That is what, guys? 56. Okay, divided by the n factor. What is the n factor? Find out the change. What is the change happening? Fe यहाँ पे +2 में है, +2 से कहाँ गया? 0. तो +2 से 0 कितने का चेंज पता चलता है? 2 का चेंज. तो 56 divided by 2. तो answer will be 28. So what do you know? 28 grams of Fe डिपॉजिट होगा कब? जब 1 Faraday का इलेक्ट्रिसिटी यूज होगा. तो 1 Faraday of electricity will give you 28 grams of Fe deposition. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve the question on the concept we learned recently. It says that यहाँ पे पूछा गया है 2024. The question is calculate the mass of copper deposited by passing a current of 9.6487 ampere through a copper sulfate solution for 100 seconds. Okay, and 1 Faraday is this much coulomb. The molar mass of copper is 63 gram per mole. This is given to us. Now, according to the Faraday's first law, we know that Faraday first law ने हमको क्या कहा था कि amount of substance or mass of substance deposited. What is our substance? Our substance is copper. So mass of copper deposited will be equal to E into I into T upon F. This was a formula, yes or no? Yes. E is the equivalent mass, I is the current in amperes, T is the time in seconds, and F is the Faraday's constant. Value कितना था बोलो? 96500 coulomb. Let's put the values here. अगर आपको E का वैल्यू नहीं पता तो let's find out E first. E is what? Equivalent mass. तो equivalent mass का फॉर्मूला किसका होगा? Of copper. The formula would be molar mass upon n factor. Now, how would you calculate the n factor here? Guys, question में CuSO4 दिए. Now, if you were to ionize this copper sulfate, it is going to break down to form Cu2 plus and SO4 2 minus. So we have a kata n Cu plus 2. It will gain 2 electrons and it would would get converted into what? Cu का atom. So यहाँ से कितने इलेक्ट्रॉन का चेंज हो रहा है? +2 से 0, +2 से 0, कितने का चेंज? 2 का चेंज. N factor would be 2. So now the value would be molar mass is given to us in the question as 63 upon N factor would be 2. So 63 divided by 2 is 31.5. This much would be the answer for equivalent mass, and the answer ka unit would be in grams. So this much is the equivalent mass. Now let's take this value and substitute here. So therefore our mass of copper would be what? E ka value kitna hai? 31.5 multiplied by I is the current is given as 9.6487 multiplied by time is 100 seconds and divided by what? Divided by the charge of Faraday. Faraday का value दिया है 96487. Okay, clearly बहुत ही simple maths यहाँ पे नजर आता हो दिख रहा है. What is the case? 100 यहाँ से multiply हो जाएगा तो यहाँ पे decimal shift कर सकते हैं और ये पूरा cancel करेंगे तो ऊपर क्या बचेगा? सिर्फ ये भी cancel, तो ऊपर क्या बचा? सिर्फ 10⁻². ये 10⁻² इसके साथ दे देंगे तो डेसिमल एडजस्ट करके the final value that we are going to get is 0.315 and because this is the mass का unit क्या होता है? grams. So your answer would match as option D, dog. तो आंसर क्या है? D. ऐसे मैच होता है. This is your question for 24 का NEET exam. Let's look at the next question. Okay, ये भी अभी का concept जो पढ़ा है उसी के ऊपर है. Let's read the question. It says the number of Faradays required to produce 20 grams of calcium. Okay, mass of calcium is given to us as what? 20 grams from the molten solution of calcium chloride CaCl2 and the atomic mass of calcium is 40 grams. How do you calculate number of Faraday? तो number of Faraday का हमको formula याद है. The number of Faraday required, number of Faraday will be number of moles multiplied by the N factor. Now, do you have the moles directly given to you? No. So our first task would be to find out the moles and also the N factor. Let's go and find out the moles, guys. So moles of calcium, the formula will be mass upon molar mass. Correct? Yes, correct. Absolutely. How much is the mass given to us in the question? It is 20 grams. Okay. What is the molar mass of calcium? What is the atomic mass? Molar mass of calcium? It is 40. The value would be 1/2. This is the number of mole. This much is the mole that we are gonna get. Okay. Now finding out the value of N factor. What is our electrolyte used? Our electrolyte in the question is given as CaCl2. When you are going to ionize CaCl2, it is going to break into calcium +2 का cation and 2Cl-. So from that we are going to get a calcium +2 का cation which will gain 2 electrons and get converted itself into calcium का atom. The electron का change would be from +2 से कहाँ गया? 0. +2 से 0 बोलो कितने का change? 2 का change. So N factor therefore would be 2. Use all those values which is फाइंड आउट बाय अस. यही चीज को हम यहाँ पे सब्स्टिट्यूट कर देंगे. तो मोल्स कितना आया गाइस हमारे पास? हाफ मोल आया मल्टीप्लाइड बाय एन फैक्टर कितना आया? 2. ये 2 एंड ये 2 आपस में कैंसिल हो गए और व्हाट आर वी रिमेनिंग विद दिस वैल्यू इज 1. सो यहाँ पे नंबर ऑफ फैराडे कितना मिलेगा? सिर्फ 1 फैराडे मिलेगा. और वो कौन सा ऑप्शन में लिखता है? ऑप्शन बी, दैट इज बैट. Okay, I hope this is clear. We covered a very small concept for Faraday's first law. अगले बार में we are going to talk about Faraday's second law of electrolysis. Thank you.